Before you are dismissed, Mr. Stiffsticker, I suggest you count your bees. You may find that one of them is missing.
And welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we have a great guest today. We've got Zach Reiner here, and he's going to talk to us about working in the industry and doing something that we've never heard before. He walked away. What was the motive behind that? And how did he end up in beekeeping of all places? But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and please share this video and others like it with everyone else that you know. Help the audience grow. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and let's dive in. Zach, my man, how are you doing this fine November day?
Luca, I'm fantastic. It's an honor to be on your show. I appreciate you reaching out, and I'm looking forward to talking life, just talking my story, talking film, talking beekeeping, and I'm grateful and honored that you would choose to even talk to me on your birthday. Happy birthday, man.
Thank you. Yes, and at the time of recording, it is my birthday, but I'm not going to say how old I am because I'm a very vain person. Zach, I noticed that you have a full head of hair. You'll find this pretty funny. My hair started turning white at 25, and as soon as I found that white strand of hair, I was like, nope, not having it, and I shaved my head.
Oh, let's go, man.
And I've pretty much been bald, ever since then. So
respect. I've done all the hairs. My hair is thinning. I think I probably need to let it go soon. It's starting to get a little thin, but I've been bald for a while. I enjoyed that. How do you like being bald?
I'll tell you this. A lot of people thought I was a little bit weird because they all said the same thing. They said, "I don't see that little white strand of hair. What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "You don't see it. It's there." Like, and it's kind of counterintuitive because if you want people to not notice it, you don't draw attention to yourself. But I'm the sort of person who does the exact opposite. So after a while, people were like, "Oh yeah, I do see that white strand of hair," and it got me even more paranoid.
So more self-conscious. I get it.
Yeah, and plus, once the pandemic hit and everything started going haywire, I kind of thought, you know what, I was pretty much ahead of the curve because now I don't need to worry about going and getting a haircut. I can just spend $2 buying shaving cream and razors at the dollar store, and doing it every other day. And and I'll tell you this: in the wintertime, it can be a bit hectic, but that's why you wear a hat. But in the summertime, oh man, I mean, every little breeze that hits, it's like, oh, it's a godsend.
I can't imagine a bald head in this southern heat. Being from the north, like you could get away with being bald, all year round, whatever. You're not going to get baked. But being down here with a bald head, I don't know how you do it, but props to you.
Well, I mean, the first few months was a bit difficult, but after a while, you kind of get used to it. So usually after a day when you get like a little bit of hair growing, that's when my head gets really itchy. And there have been nights where I'll lay in bed and I'm like, I can't sleep. My head is so itchy, so I have to get up, and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to, and I go in and shave my head, and then when I go back to bed, I'm like, this feels right, and then I fall asleep right away.
That's awesome. Yeah, when that 5 o'clock shadow starts creeping in on the top of your head, yeah, that's when you know.
Yep, exactly.
I can't imagine. That's got to be pretty itchy.
Exactly. So, Zach, let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah, let's dive in.
So originally, I interviewed Julie Emmons of the Carolina film community, and by the way, I'll have a link down below if y'all want to catch that episode. But Julie mentioned you as after the episode ended, and she mentioned that you were a beekeeper. And as soon as she said that, I was like, I have to talk to this guy. Like, that has been my fantasy for 10 years. I have always dreamt of retiring to upstate South Carolina with a beekeeping farm and just spending my entire days just waddling out to the hive and just checking to see if there was honey. And I even bought a lapel pin with a bronze bee.
Let's go.
So so that's how serious I am, and I'm seriously considering getting one of those wax stamps with a bee on it, just because it's just such a weird fascination that I have.
I support it. But
before we go into the exciting part about beekeeping, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, and you can go into as many details as possible, because I just love hearing about people's lives and about their work in the industry, which which you said that you used to work in the film industry.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll give you all the details because I think it really plays into it makes where I'm at now make a little more sense. I went to school up in Indiana, middle of nowhere in the cornfields. I'm from Cincinnati. I went in actually as an environmental science major. My freshman year, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew that from birth, really, I have loved the outdoors. I've loved animals. I've loved nature. I'd loved being in that world. And so I went to school to study that and really dove into that major for a year and a half, 2 years. And a bunch of random things happened. And I got paired up with a roommate who was a communications major. And I had taken all of some of the more intense classes freshman year, diving into the environmental science world. I liked it. I didn't love it. And so while I'm in this season of just kind of questioning, like, am I in the right place? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Do I love this stuff? Could I see myself doing this the rest of my life? My roommate was doing projects that I found myself doing in my free time. He was working on video stuff. He was messing with audio. He was mixing some things. He was doing some editing. And I'm like, you're getting graded to do what I do in my free time, like what I enjoy doing when I'm not doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that season, I think it was my sophomore summer, I made the decision to switch majors from my environmental science to what then was called, I think, film and video production. Granted, we didn't touch physical film. We never touched it. Why that was in the name of the major, I have no idea. But that really kind of shifted and changed the direction that I would continue down really until now. So that kind of fueled that. That was the story of kind of how I started. So senior year, fast forward, we're looking for jobs. I'm putting my resume out there, and I find a connection through one of my advisors to a place down in Charlotte. I'd never heard of Charlotte. I didn't know where North Carolina was. I couldn't put it out on a map. I really couldn't, which is really embarrassing. I just was never good at geography. And I really hadn't been this far south before. I've got family in Atlanta, but we never touched the East Coast. We just went straight down for holidays, and then we go back up to Ohio. So I don't know. I was living under a rock for most of my childhood, I would say. But anyway, moved to Charlotte. I had the opportunity to start out with an internship. It wasn't a full-time position. It was stipend. It was just kind of to get my feet and my hands wet and into the production world. And so they let me do a bunch of random stuff. I was doing a little bit of editing. I was on set, doing some bigger productions, kind of working as a PA then. I didn't know what a PA was at that point, but doing a lot of the same jobs that a PA does on set. And so that 3 months was over. And during one of those bigger productions with this company, I made a connection with someone in this contract freelance production world in Charlotte. And man, it was a gift. That relationship ended up just to be a complete godsend. And I guess my work and my effort stood out, and she inquired to see if I was going to even be staying in Charlotte after the internship. And I had to really ponder. I had to think about it because I didn't know what was next. I didn't really have a plan after the internship, other than to see if I could apply for some kind of full-time position, part-time position at where I was working, to see if they would even consider making a spot for me. Because I don't even think at that time there was something officially carved out.
So let me ask you. So let me ask you this. So,
I'm babbling. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. So at that time when you were doing the internship here in Charlotte, was it mainly just like commercial work or indie work, or what was it?
It's hard to describe without. It's just it was a lot of media production geared toward, I don't know, the mission of the organization I was working for. So it was a lot of internal stuff, but bigger production than more of the small house production kind of stuff that you'd find. I don't know if I would say indie. It's hard to explain. I work for Billy Graham, so I work for the production house there. So anything that they're kicking out, we had a hand in. So a lot of natural disaster relief, we send a rapid response team out to cover just the destruction, but also the relationship building, to encourage people that lost everything. We do a TBS program every year, or every month, I'm sorry. And so that's usually 3 main stories on main subjects, and then some stand-ups and some advertising in between. So our team's constantly going. We have a lot of contractors, a lot of full-time people, and we really move a mile a minute because there's just so much going on. And one thing I'm sure you understand in the media world is that you've got to stay current. So you're constantly looking for leads. You're constantly keeping up with current events and things going on in the world, things going on in, I mean, sometimes politics, sometimes the medical world, sometimes just like the social tensions, things like that. So there's a lot of stories to tell. You could tell. So that's kind of the media that I was kind of involved in, but I was very hands off because I was still an intern. They didn't know what I could do. I didn't know what I could do. I was just there to help. I was there to learn. I was there to absorb skills. I was there to get hands on with the equipment and just kind of understand that production world. Because I was thankful and grateful for my college experience. We graduated with really a variety of experience on our plate. I did multicam production. I did live production. I did documentary. I did narrative, script writing. I had experience in all those things, but like just college experience, not the real world. Sometimes there's a huge gap. And I think for me, I really didn't realize how many millions of directions you could go in the production world. So I came down to Charlotte with an open mind, open heart to just learn, just to absorb from the people around me that have gone before me, done it before me, know way more than I may ever know in my life, and just be of help in any way that I could. So that was my internship. And toward the end of those 3 months, I was connected with a freelance contract. I really don't know the term, and a production manager, I guess, is what I want to call her. And she helped me pick up my first PA gig here in Charlotte. And she hired me on to do some PA work, and that's kind of all she wrote. I ended up working 19 hours with Billy Graham for a couple of years, and then in my other, I guess, 20-ish hours, sometimes more and sometimes through the weekends, I was able to work as a PA on sets across Charlotte. And typically it was TV commercials, and there was a few movie trailers, but it was typically a lot of TV commercials. And I don't know if I'm allowed to name brands, and this is not me bragging, but I had the opportunity to be on set for like NFL commercials, Gatorade, a lot of NASCAR stuff. I spent a lot of time at the NASCAR Speedway up in Concord.
Yeah.
Random stuff that would come through. And I was grateful for everything. And I was grateful to meet and to work with just wonderful people that understand the industry, understand the pace, they know how to just stay focused. They know how to work hard. They know how to help in the ways that the crew and that the set needs help. I just learned a lot from those people. And so I was grateful for that time, but I left. And I know that we wanted to touch on that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of the guests that I've had previously, they're still in it. They're still working. They're still grinding out, paying their dues, and just working because they love the craft. But I wanted you to touch on what motivated you to decide maybe this isn't for me after all.
Yeah, I don't do stress well. And stress doesn't do me very well either. And I don't even know if that makes sense, but that just felt like that. It just kind of, it was such a fast pace. It was such just a tough schedule to keep, physically, mentally draining at points. But there were also times on set where it was so life-giving, and the people that you get to work with were incredible, and they really were what kept me going. But I was working 19 hours at this production house, and I had this one role, and then I was going and on set, and I was being a production assistant, and I was going another direction. And so I got to this crossroads where I just realized that I really just wanted to focus and nail down just one thing. I had my hand in, it seemed like too many things at that point. And I had PA friends that really, they were able to work alongside different departments, and they're now working with those departments. And I think at that age, knowing younger Zach, I was shy, and I didn't really take advantage of those connections and those opportunities, and that might be my fault. That might be something that I look back on one day and regret, because I know there are a lot of incredible people that work on those sets, and they know so much, and they're so talented, and they have the eye, they have the skill set, and they work so hard day in and day out. And so I have a lot of respect for the people that I had the privilege of being on set with day in and day out. I just felt like this other opportunity, this other direction was more of what I was called to. I felt more purpose there. And I think also just the stability. If I'm being honest, there was opportunity to have a more stable income, to work a more set schedule. And I think that after years of working those super long days and super fast pace, and I don't know, the stress of sometimes not knowing what every day was going to look like, those things kind of matter to me. And even with my job I have now, every day is a little different, but I just at the time couldn't handle the stress of the unknown, of knowing when the next shoot was going to happen, because when my 19 hours were up at my production house and I didn't have another shoot to work, I didn't have work, and I didn't have the money to maybe, to invest in stuff to get started doing some contract work or freelance things. I didn't have that. I didn't have the resources. And so part of that decision definitely played into me deciding to go full time with the other production house, the other organization. So that's kind of how I ended up there. And I'm thankful. I'm thankful for the last 5 years. I've been officially an assistant video editor full time for the organization, and the things that I've learned, the things that have been sharpened, the tools I've added to my toolbox in this post-production world, I'm grateful for those things. So I'm thankful that I had an opportunity to be in that world, to understand a little bit, just a little bit, of how things worked, and to meet the amazing people I did. But I'm at peace with where I'm at now, and kind of the direction that this career path is heading down as well. I'm grateful for the new opportunities, and even being able to, just in the last year, I've started doing a little more contract editing for my brother-in-law up in Chicago, doing social media reels and really sharpening my editing skills, because I don't tend to do a lot of the creative editing at my current position. I do a lot more media processing, archiving, transcoding. I do a lot of multicams, syncing, quick stand-ups, quick turnaround pieces, things like that don't necessarily involve all of the parts of a creative edit. So that's the story. That's kind of how I wound up where I'm at, and a lot of random details along the way that I'm sure I left out, but that's kind of how I ended up here, and why I chose to leave that world and pursue this other career path in the same bubble, same umbrella, but just a different environment, different world.
Right, because because on paper, 19 hours doesn't seem like a lot,
No.
and a lot of people would would definitely kill for a position like that, if to get their foot in the door. So and this might sound like a pretty stupid question, but what was it about the 19 hours that that just made you think, what, maybe this isn't it? Because I know you mentioned earlier that it was pretty unpredictable, in spite of the fact that you had a very short work week.
Yeah, so I really, during that time, as a PA and also working the 19 hours, I was really trying to plant seeds of just kind of not pushing the envelope, but really inquiring hard about a potential full-time position opening up, because I felt like there was a position and there was a need for what I was bringing to the table. And I think I was chasing that stability in the midst of still trying to bring my A game every day to set, and still trying to put in 500% every day that I was on set, because I was grateful for that. I was grateful for the opportunity. You don't have to get called back. And I know that in the PA world, they've always said, like, you're only as good as your last job. And so I made sure that when I was on set, that I was ready to go. I knew what I was supposed to do. I had the supplies I needed to have. I was at the hotel. I was going for the pickups and then the returns, and helping in any way I could, because I knew that 19 hours a week and no PA work, I'm in trouble. That's tough. And so yeah, there were just some really stressful, really hard decisions to make in the chaos of trying to juggle both worlds. Because the contrast between the worlds that I was working in, it got to be a lot too, because it's just a different pace, it's a different focus, it's a different world. Being at my organization and then jumping, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday onto set, and it's just a totally, I don't know how to describe it. I really don't know how to describe it other than it was just like night and day difference on the worlds that I had to kind of juggle in both hands for a couple of years actually.
All right.
And gosh, I'm going down the memory lane that I haven't been down in a while. I really haven't. I haven't thought about that. I feel like it was just such a chaotic season because not only did I move down here to a new place, I didn't know anyone, I didn't know anything. I had some roommates throughout the way, and I was meeting new people on set. I was still meeting people at the organization that I was part-time at, learning my roles there, learning different skill sets that I never thought that I would learn graduating from school. One of the first things I learned how to do was digitize to tape. I never thought I'd touch a tape in my entire life. But digitizing old programs and new programs to tape to be delivered to stations that only accepted programs on tape still. So it was just like I was in all of it, and because I was in all of it, I feel like sometimes my mind was in none of it because there was just so much going on all the time. And yeah, I haven't really thought about where my mind was in those seasons, and really the things that absolutely led to specific decisions to stay and to leave different places. I think about my freelance world. I think about being a PA a lot still. It was a tough call. It was a tough world to leave because every shoot felt like we were going through a war and we were coming out together closer than anyone. People don't realize this, but PAs, I've always said this, they are the glue of a set. They hold everything together, whether the pay looks like that or not, or whether we're treated like that or not. We are the first to arrive. Besides location scouts, we are the first to get there and we are the last ones to leave. And things don't function smoothly without a production assistant on set and a team of good ones. And so I feel for them. I still have the scars, from working some really tough sets with some really tough people on a really tight schedule. And not everything goes as planned. Not every shot is exactly how it was scripted and storyboarded. And that's time and money, and that's frustration, and people are hungry, and PAs just have to hold it together, And so that really toughened me up. That grew me as a person, really grew me as a man. And I'm just in awe of the people that continue to do that, and work as PAs. And yeah, that's all I can really say. That's where I was. I didn't join any other departments. I didn't really build any other skills in other places. The PA world was my world, and what I grew to know and what I grew to do for most of that season of my life. And so that's where it ended, basically as it began.
Gotcha. So I did want to ask you, what was the most difficult part about being a PA? Like, were there any like particular events or particular tasks that just made you think, oh shit, I got to do that?
There were some days where all of it did. There was, once you get used to the schedule and the sleep that you're not going to get, that becomes easy. But getting home at 1 a.m. to then go to sleep and be somewhere again for day 2 at 3:30 a.m. With a production truck ready to just start lifting stuff again and setting up trash cans and chairs and getting tables ready and handing out walkies and labeling everything and things like that. Oh my gosh, like that's just a lot to do. And that's a quick turnaround, and you are running on 2 hours of sleep, and it could potentially be another long day. That still, I think, is the hardest part because that affects everything else. That affects your ability to respond to people that are hard to deal with on set. That affects your patience, your level of patience with people. That affects your physical body to just be on your feet all day, walking around. yeah, I would say that just the sleep schedule was for me the hardest part. I like my sleep. I'm like 30 going on 60. And I think you'll see that even more as we get into beekeeping. But like, I just need something slower, and I think really that's what it came down to too. In the making that decision, I just need something a little slow, and maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm weak. Maybe I bailed too soon. That was just something that I couldn't get over. It was just so fast paced, so like nonstop all the time. And some people live for that. Some people literally live for that. And I saw that on set and I met those people and I loved that for them. But that wasn't for me. And so yeah, the sleep and just how that affects your entire day, your entire ability to hold it together and do everything to the best of your ability on set, I think was the hardest part about being the PA on set.
So yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely because I mean, just because I watch these interviews where they interview people who started off as PAs, and it's like, how do they ever find the strength to keep going? Because it just wears you down over and over again.
It really does. It really does. And there was always light at the end of the tunnel. There was always, you could always see the end of a shoot and you could feel the energy and the joy and the excitement raise again with your team. But like, there were days where you couldn't see it. Like the team couldn't see it. There was just so much going on. There was so much to get done in the day. The weather sucked. Things were going wrong. We have someone that's just been extremely hard to work with on set, and they've just kind of put a damper on the entire set and the entire day. It was tough. It was tough to want to keep moving. But at the end of the day, you knew that you had someone else doing the exact same thing you were doing, struggling with the exact same thing. And you just kind of put your head down and you did it together. And so that's why it felt like war. I mean, that's why it felt like we were getting through something really hard every time we stepped on set as a family. And I knew that 98% of what we were going to do wasn't going to get any credit, wasn't going to get any acknowledgement. So there was a lot of humility. Like there was just a lot of, it required a level of humility that most people couldn't stomach. Like you weren't going to get your name in the lights. You weren't going to get a chair with your name on it. You were going to stand all day. You were going to empty trash. You were going to lift and load trucks and tables, and you're going to clean up spills. You're going to do all these things that are very like low on the totem pole, but you're on set. You're on set with some incredible people, and you get to see the process beginning to end. You get to help in any way you can. So I tried to see it that way. I tried to be of service and to be a servant to the people that needed help and try to keep a good attitude. Because I think at that point, those things are contagious. So it was tough to press through. There are days where I wasn't on my A game, but there are days where I remember just having to stick it out, just having to stay positive and just encourage and to help people that were feeling the same way that I was trying not to feel. It sometimes gets the best of you, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you end up meeting Julie?
So I met Julie on set, and I want to say, and I was listening to her episode. I want to say before she was doing casting, I thought I met her as another PA for a couple of shoots, and we worked together. We worked together for a while, I would say, and we weren't on every shoot together, but yeah, we definitely crossed paths a lot. And that's what blows my mind in this whole full circle of you and I talking and her, bringing my name up, and we can get into her husband and the beekeeping side too. It just blows my mind that full circle I'm brought back into the conversation. I'm grateful for that, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, I think Julie was a PA, or maybe she had her hands in some other departments. Like maybe she was going that route and becoming friends and building relationships and connections with people from different parts of set and learning their worlds a little bit more.
So now I want to so how does this transition to you becoming a beekeeper?
Julie, so about a year ago, my wife and I had a huge tree fall in our backyard, and it blew over from a storm. And it was so rotted that the inside of the tree looked like coffee grounds. Like it was just mush. It was ground up. It was going to fall any minute. I could have probably blown on it and it would have fallen in our yard. Anyway, it was a huge tree, and after the storm blew through and the weather kind of calmed down, we were out in the backyard just kind of trying to assess what we were going to do next, because it wasn't my tree. It was my neighbor's tree, but it was halfway in our yard, just about took out our shed. And so while we were there assessing the damage, seeing what was the best plan of action, we noticed that there were bees coming in and out of a knot, like a knot in the tree.
Mhm.
And my wife and I have some pretty big green thumbs. We love to garden, really like the homesteading life, trying to do things ourselves and not necessarily be off grid fully, but just learn those skills and do those things. So we have a soft spot for animals, and so we decided the best plan of action was to get a beekeeper to come out and rehome the bees. We didn't want our neighbor's tree company to come out and just butcher it, just chop it up and kill the bees and ruin the home that they had worked so hard to build. So we took some quick action, and we got online and quickly found a list of swarm catchers, people that are on our list in Charlotte and the Charlotte area, to come out and rehome bees that are in this exact situation where they are going to be killed. They're going to be sprayed. People don't care. And that's how I got connected to Julie's husband, Randall, who came out. I was connected with him on a Facebook group, I think in Mecklenburg. And he came out our way. He brought his son, and he had a suit, and they lit their smoker, and he pulled up with his truck and all that stuff. Not in that order, but that's all he did. And let me sit out there with them and rehome the swarm of bees that were in this tree. And the whole entire time, I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget that interaction, because he just was so inspiring. And Randall was so passionate about bees, and he was so happy to answer any question that I had as they were, going through the process. He had his I guess rehoming hive, his spare hive out with him. He had an electric chainsaw because he didn't want to make too much noise and too much vibration, and he started cutting the top and bottom of this piece that he was assuming that the bees had built their home up to. So he wasn't trying to cut through the hive. He was just trying to cut the top and bottom so he could move this separate piece away with all the bees. And I'm asking questions. I'm probably being really annoying at this point, because I was so hyped. It was such a new world for me. I'd never really thought about bees. I'd never really seen a hive. I've seen a lot of wasp hives, but I've never seen a beehive other than like science class and on TV and the nature docs and stuff like that. I've never seen one in person. And so I was like probably shorts and a t-shirt, and they're in suits, and they had their veil jackets on and their jeans and their long pants. And I'm out there just like in it, just wanting to get in, get my hands on everything, know what things are, why they're doing certain things. And the whole time Randall was just teaching me about bee behavior, teaching me about their biology and what's going on in the hive and all that stuff. And so after 2 days, they were able to get that entire swarm of bees from that log into the hive, and they ratchet strapped it up and they put it on their truck, and they were on their way. But in the meantime, I was texting him back and forth and asking a bunch of questions, checking in on the bees, and just so inspired. He left, and I was just like, I just can't believe what I just saw. And he talked to me as they were out there, and he said, you could probably keep bees back here, and I definitely encourage you to do so. You have a little bit of land, you have all you would need, but you should totally become a beekeeper. And so with the garden in the backyard, the beekeeper thing just kind of felt like the natural next step. We're growing a lot of stuff. I'm planting a lot of flowers. My wife's growing a lot of vegetables, things like that. Bees just kind of made sense. And that was where it all began. And just the process. And he was walking me through the process of rehoming the bees. And he's telling me about how the queen really controls everything. Her pheromone is everything. And so if you find the queen, then the swarm will follow. And so he found the queen, and after 2 days, all of those thousands of bees from that log had made their way into that temporary hive. Blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. And that seed was planted, and that seed just started to grow immediately. As soon as they left, I was online. I was looking at stuff, and then stumbled upon the Mecklenburg Bee School and signed up for that January to March, 2 hours every Monday. And that's it. That's how it all started.
So can you walk me through the process of what it's like to go to bee school? Because that's something I've never heard of.
Yeah.
Before.
So that's, and I know we're going to get into this, and I want to talk to you about this, because I will always encourage, now that I know what I know, I will always encourage people to sign up for their local city, county, whatever, bee school. There's a very good chance that the county you live in or the city you live in has a beekeepers association. And so I went on, I was connected to the Mecklenburg Beekeepers School. And basically it's a 9-week program, and it's 2 hours every Monday. We meet in the gym of an old church, and we study everything bees. So the first 2 weeks are bee biology. We cover different equipment. We cover pest and disease, and IPM, which is integrated pest management, and different ways to help with the pest and disease that can get into a hive and totally collapse a colony. You have a gear day where you're able to get hands-on with all the gear, see what size you are in the different style veils, hold the different size boxes, 10 frame, 8 frame, see what you like, see what you don't like. We mess with hive tools. We learn how to light a smoker for the first time, things like that. So they set a day aside during that 9 weeks for you to come out and actually get to experience, all of the hands-on parts of beekeeping. And I think my favorite part about the school is that they pair you with a mentor in your area. So you don't have to beekeep alone. You don't have to learn this world on your own by yourself. You have a mentor who cares about bees, who loves bees, and wants to see you and your bees succeed. So that was a gift, and I love my mentor, and I'm grateful for her and all of the emergency trips she's taken out to my house this year. As I have a ton of questions, I want to know why the bees are doing certain things. It's really freaking me out. She's been awesome to work with, and I'm always grateful for when she comes out to the house to help me understand what's going on in the bee world.
So I imagine once you complete the course, you get a certificate or something?
Yeah, so this course is designed to, by the end of your 9 weeks, prepare you to take the official North Carolina State Bee Association's test. So it's the handwritten test, and that test covers, it's tricky because that test covers a lot of what you learn in the bee school. The problem is it seems like in 9 weeks, there's not enough time to teach you everything that's going to be on the test. So they do their absolute very best to teach you and prep you for the test. But I think there's a given that every year there's going to be some surprise questions that you may have never seen or never heard. So that's tough, but that also encourages you to pick a book up again after school and continue reading and continue learning. And so maybe there's some method to the madness on that. So then after that, you have to keep bees for 4 months to then officially qualify to take the field test, which completes your certification as a beekeeper. So in my email, I mentioned that I'm close to that. I've done my written test. I've passed that. I've had bees for 4 months, but with scheduling and being out of town, I haven't been able to really sync up with my mentor yet for her to come out and give me the practical, the field test in my little apiary in the backyard.
Gotcha. So that's something you're working to complete.
I'm working toward it. Yeah. And I think because I've just started doing my winter prep and the temperatures are dropping. Bees don't like anything that's 55 degrees or colder. That really is not their vibe. They're not feeling that. So doing any kind of field test right now would just be mean. So I might have to wait till spring when the bees are up and at 'em again and lively and are foraging again to really, do the test to its entirety and see that through. So it's probably going to be not until next year that I officially get certified.
Gotcha. Well, that kind of makes sense too, because bees are pretty much seasonal animals, like bears and everything else. So my next question, it has to do with gear. Like, do you have to go to a special store or website to buy it, or is it DIY, or how does that work? How do you get started in building a hive and getting the gear and getting a smoker?
Yeah, so there are it's about a million directions you can go as a beekeeper, and I think that's why I like it. It's you become your own kind of beekeeper. There's a million styles. There's a million ways to do it. There's always going to be the people that tell you that there's one way, and if you don't do it that way, you're wrong. I'm a first year beekeeper. I don't know what I don't know what I don't know. But I think one thing that I've come to the conclusion of is that you can go your own way. You can do your own thing to a certain degree, and I'll explain. So to get gear, and to get frames and to get boxes, you can go to Amazon. I know a lot of people in the bee school really encourage you to buy local, and I support that. I think that's awesome, and there's a few reasons why. A lot of things that you'll find on Amazon, sometimes they aren't made well. There's a very specific dimensions that hive boxes have to be, and sometimes when you buy off Amazon, you're buying product from another country that don't necessarily adhere to those specific industry dimensions. So sometimes you'll get frames that don't fit the boxes you bought here in North Carolina from the bee shop down the street.
Right.
And so that's just annoying. Also, a lot of times there are hive boxes that are dipped in waxes to protect them from the elements outside. And depending on what those are, may or may not be good for the bees. So I've also heard that sometimes the chemicals that are used even the waxes, the ingredients to make up some of the waxes that these boxes are dipped in that you're buying online, can be sometimes detrimental to the bees. They're pretty sensitive to a degree, and they're pretty hardy as well. And we'll get into that. But there's actually a shop that my wife and I really love to go to. And this might be a shout out to them. This might be, me putting their name out there. We really love it.
Go for it.
Because it's an experience, and we love the town of Asheboro. And I know you said you went to school in Greensboro, correct?
Yeah.
How far away is that from Asheboro? Is it
So
close at all?
I live in Charlotte, so whenever I had to drive up to Greensboro to go back to school, usually it would take, if I was going at a pretty high speed, usually I would get to Asheboro by within 45 minutes, and then it would be like another 30 to 40 minutes to get to Greensboro.
Okay, so you're not that far, but it's a really small hallmark little town.
Yeah.
We love it for the antique malls, and we love it for the little coffee shop, and there's a really good Mexican restaurant there too. But right outside of Asheboro is a bee store, and it's this really cute red barn. The guy's got 50 or 60 hives all around the property, and it's right next to a cow pasture. It's perfect. Like, as a beekeeper, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to go every time. But it's called Bees Needs, with a Z, 2 Z's.
Right.
Of course, because you have to. And they have everything. And the guy that runs it, it's a cool story. And the staff that work it, they're so nice, and they're just so willing to help and teach you and get you set up with the right equipment based on the kind of beekeeping you want to do. I think they only sell one style of hive, and there are probably, 10 to 15 different styles of hives that you can keep. But in bee school, as a new beekeeper, they really encourage you to start out with what's called a Langstroth hive, which is that classic, box. Doesn't have to be painted white. It can be painted a bunch of different colors, but that white box with, either your 8 frames or your 10 frames, that's typically where they encourage you to start, just so that everything they've taught so far carries over like a 1-to-1, that you don't have to improvise. You don't have to do things a certain, learn your own way and navigate new territory on your own. It's kind of why they encourage you to do that. So that's the route I took. And I started off with one Langstroth hive, and I have 2 boxes, and then I've got a queen excluder. We can talk about that. And then I've got my deep super, which is basically the box that they put the honey in. That's not traditionally the way to go. It was chaos this year, and I had boxes and I didn't have boxes, so I just threw stuff on top. Typically the setup is 2 deeps, and then you do like a medium super, which is just a thinner box on top, and that's where the bees will then collect their honey throughout the season. I ramble so much, and I'm so sorry about that, Luca.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. Keep going.
The world of bees is just so large, and there's so much to talk about. And I know that I'm not doing the beekeeping community. I'm not doing it justice because there's so much that I don't know as a first year beekeeper, but there's so much I've learned. That's the typical setup. So bees needs, they've got everything you need. There's also another place up, I believe in Concord, dandelion something. The name's not coming to me right now, but it's another smaller shop, and it's actually closer in Charlotte, so people don't want to drive that far. That they have all the supplies you need as well, and they get you fitted for your veils. They get you set up with their smoker. All of the random tools that you learn along this bee school experience in this journey that you'll need. They've got it all, and so that'd be a great place to start. A lot of big name bee school or bee stores online as well that have been around a while. And there's also another great reference online too, the American Bee Journal. They do, I think they actually sell subscriptions to magazines, but they also have an archive of some of the older stuff as well, to read about bees, to learn about bees, their behaviors, techniques, and the science and the studies and all the data collected on all things bees. It's a great resource, and I read a lot of those articles because I am constantly learning, and I love learning that world. And yeah, all that to say, beekeeping is just a giant experience, and it's a giant experiment. That's what I meant to say. We know a lot, but we don't know a lot right now in the world of beekeeping.
So you mentioned this earlier. Can you talk about what the queen excluder is? Because I always thought that the queen would be kept in the same hive as all the other bees to kind of keep them in check. But that isn't the case, right?
Right. So people think that the queen decides. She makes a lot of decisions. The queen bee actually doesn't make a lot of decisions at all. Really, her purpose is to kind of keep the chaos of the hive to a minimum, to lay eggs. A healthy queen bee can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day. So her entire job all day is to walk around cell to cell and lay an egg. And if that egg production, if her pheromone weakens, she has any kind of health defect or deformity, anything, basically her youthfulness starts to decay at all, those bees then decide to replace her with a queen that they have then started to create with one of the eggs that she laid. Some that crazy?
Oh, damn. They can do that?
They can do that. So
it sounds like party politics right there.
Yes, it's nuts. And there's some weird things that go on in a hive, and it's crazy to look out my backyard and see just a little white box, but know that there are so much random drama going on inside. So anytime that queen shows any sign of any kind of like decline in anything, the bees in that hive have started the conversation about replacing her. Like, she has no say in that. And so then they will then give they'll give a larva that she has laid, an egg that's become a larva, a special diet to then raise that queen bee as a queen. And really, this is a fun fact that blew my mind when I first realized that every female bee in a colony is just an underdeveloped queen bee. Every female bee in a colony has the potential for the first part of its life to become a queen bee. And it's only the diet. It's only the difference in diet. I think it's a higher protein diet that then allows for that bee to fully develop into a queen. And when they do that, they don't lay just one. They don't create just one. They make a couple of queen bees. And the rule is this is it just gets more weird and kind of funny and crazy. Whatever queen emerges first from that cell has to kill the other queens before they emerge.
Actually kind of makes sense when you think about
it does make sense. It makes sense, and I don't want it to make sense because it's just so aggressive. It's so like, what in the world? But she has to kill the other queens before she can really claim her stake and become the next queen. And then, I mean, that's just one hurdle. Then she has to be accepted by the colony, and there's a chance that the colony doesn't like her. And they'll do this thing it's called balling. And it basically is a bunch of honeybees, worker bees, will gather around her, basically ball her up, and they'll fan their wings, and they'll cook her to death.
Okay, I've heard about that. I've heard
just-
about. I didn't know that they did that to a queen that rejected, but I have heard about
they'll
fanning
get
bees
rid
to
of
death.
they'll get rid of her, totally get rid of her. They're like, you're done. And I mean, just them doing that, if they were to do that in a normal hive, we'd have some problems, because it's to requeen a hive, and if they don't have any other eggs and larvae that are of age and have that diet already started, it'd be tough. But that's the behavior. And so she's doing that. She's laying 2,000 eggs, hopefully, a day. There's the worker bees and all the different ages and different roles of those worker bees. They're doing different things in the hive, cleaning it up, capping those eggs over, feeding the larvae and the pupa as they're emerging, taking care of those things. There's even a bee in the hive called the undertaker, and that bee's job is purely to take out the dead bodies of the other worker bees that have died in the hive. They just clean the hive out. So as that's all going on, there's peaks of the season where the bees are coming and going with nectar and pollen, and they're doing their thing, and they're coming back with food. That queen excluder that I mentioned sits between the two bottom boxes, which are typically called the brood chambers, and that just refers to where they tend to lay their eggs, where a lot of their where the babies are made and the eggs are laid, and where the food for those babies is stored. So typically it's fascinating to open a hive, and you kind of get to read it like a book. Every frame is another page in that story that's being written in that hive. And as we're going through frames, you typically see it's almost like a rainbow pattern. You've got your honey, and you've got your pollen and everything on the outside of the frame, and on the middle toward the bottom, you've got a lot of where the queen has laid her brood and where they've been capped over. And she gets to decide. This is one thing I think she does decide, and I think the bees in the colony also help her make this decision based on the needs of the colony and the time of year. She decides if it's going to be a female worker bee or a drone bee, and those are a little bit bigger. They're fuzzier. All they do is mate. That's their only purpose. And the sex life of a bee, it's crazy to talk to you about this over the phone. Bee sex is crazy.
I think that's something we might have to save for
we
future
might have to
episode.
save. We might have to save. Just another fascinating world. There's just so much to unpack in that and their behavior for that. But anyway, so that queen excluder, it's like a metal grate. Looks like what you would cover your air conditioning unit in your house, the intake vent or the wall vent. It looks like that. Mm-hmm. And it's got slivers that are on a certain size, and it basically keeps the queen from going up to that top box where the bees are gathering and making their honey and capping their honey, and it keeps it clean. So I struggled with this when I first started beekeeping. I really was like, I'm going to let the bees be bees. I'm going to stay out of their way. I'm going to let them do their thing. I don't want to interfere. And there are people that swear by that, and there are people the other side that are like, dude, come on, you're keeping bees so you can get honey. So you might as well just throw a queen excluder on. And I wrestled with that because I didn't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I freaked out. I put a queen excluder on, and that just keeps the queen from going up and mucking up the honey and laying eggs in places, because no one wants to have to pull that out of the honey that they're going to be eating. Like no one wants to deal with that. So that queen excluder really is just to keep the queen from going up and making those top frames her brood nest as well.
Okay, I gotcha. Kind of keeping everything separate.
Keeping everything separate, keeping it clean, making it easier on me then to not have to worry about killing the queen when I'm pulling the honey box for extraction, all of that stuff. So I keep those on my hive now, and I like them. I might experiment next year without them and see what happens. Every year, beekeepers are always trying new stuff. They're always experimenting, and there's a really good template on how to get started and how to continue it. But there are a lot of unknowns, and sometimes it's based on location. Sometimes it's based on the weather, the amount of food they were able to forage that year. Like, there's just so many variables and so many factors that affect, I don't know, the colony and the behavior of a colony and why they do what they do. there's things that we don't know. We're still studying. So it's been fun to dive into that world and just like skim the surface of what's out there on what's going on in those little boxes out back.
Oh my God, I'm just imagining so many future episodes where we talk about bees. Like I'm just waiting for those future episodes, man. This is such a
I
fascinating
love it, and
topic.
there's so much to talk about, and I don't want to overwhelm you. I'm also really bad at staying on track because there's so much to talk about in the bee world. But I'm excited, and I'm happy for you, and I love that you want to become a beekeeper as well. I'm 30 years old, so it's like, don't wait for retirement. I will always do it sooner. Like just dive in, and I'll encourage you to do the bee school. I'll encourage you to, surround yourself with some mentors, and there's a lot of online resources. I love YouTube. There's some awesome pages I found on Instagram that people have been very helpful with answering questions. Bee people love to help bee people. That's what I've learned. The beekeeper community is incredible, and there are people all over the world that want to see your bees do well and help you as a beekeeper become confident, understand how to read a hive, how to read a frame, how to prepare for each season. That's been a gift. And I love that I've been in that world and been connected with some great people that are always willing to answer even dumb questions, because sometimes I just have dumb questions, I feel like, and they're more than happy to answer and help me succeed, help me to help the bees do their thing.
So I want to bring it back to the filmmaking aspect. Were there any experiences or skills that you learned while working in film that kind of translated over to being a beekeeper?
Dang, man, that's
You knew I was going to ask that question.
Yeah, I did. I heard you ask Julie what her favorite movie was, and I was ready for that one. But
that's coming at the end.
That's coming
by the
at the end. Okay,
Yep.
Dang, that's a stumper, and I need to think about that. Shoot, and I really want it to be profound too. I really want it to be profound. I don't know. There was, I think there's a point in the life of a PA where you have to learn to allow the chaos to happen and be there, but be hands off. Like you just have to let things happen. And understanding that, and understanding that at the end of the day, something beautiful is going to come out of what we're doing. It may not feel like it in the moment. You may not be able to see it right there in front of you. It's very similar to beekeeping. Like there are, at the peak of a season, 30,000 to 60,000 bees inside of a strong hive. And there are small hive beetles. There are varroa mites. There are random things in the hive that are trying to hurt, trying to basically knock out your bees. And it's a lot, and it can be chaotic. It can be stressful, and you always feel like you're never doing the right thing. You're never doing enough. You're making it worse. And sometimes letting bees just be bees, as you're aiding them, you're helping them, you're doing the best that you can, letting them just do the thing that they've been so good at doing before you even were on this planet, it could be the answer, and you get to just sit back. And sometimes, like, they're animals. They've been living in tree holes for, so many years, this freaking long time. And they don't necessarily need me, but they can use some assistance every once in a while. And to be able to sit back and let them do their thing, there's going to be some beautiful things that come out of that. They're able to requeen, like they're able to find a new leader. They're able to like organize that chaos themselves most of the time. And I get to just sit back sometimes and watch them come and go from the hive, or bounce from flower to flower on the vegetable garden, or take a walk down the street in our neighborhood with my wife. And I always joke every time I see a bee, I'm like, there's one of our bees, she's working, she's working. Probably isn't our bee, but it might be. And so it's just cool to I don't know, to have a front row seat of just a really cool natural thing that happens, and know that they're going to be okay. Like, it's going to be fine. It may be chaos. They may be doing things you've never seen before. You may not have all the answers, but they're doing their thing, and they're happy to have you along. They don't need you, but they're doing their thing, and it's a beautiful thing. And so That's a stretch. That's really a stretch. And maybe you believe it or maybe you don't. But that is my answer to that question.
No,
And
well, it makes sense too because like you said earlier, I mean, even though you may not be needed, the fact that you're there kind of shows that you are needed to a degree.
yeah,
You know,
I like that. That sounds good. Yeah, thanks for summarizing that. That's it's beautiful. It's way more beautiful when you say it.
well, I appreciate it. I've had quite a while to think about that too. So I do want to ask you a question about climate change. How has that affected beekeeping, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I know we just the news just actually interviewed one of our advisors about, well, I guess the head of the bee school about that, and she, I don't remember how she answered this, and I don't want to give her answer because I think I have my own opinion on it. I would say it's getting hotter. I mean, honestly, I would say that summers are getting hotter and winters are. The South. I don't know how to feel about winters as a whole in the South yet because we've just had fall for like 4 months. It's November and I've been in shorts and a t-shirt just like last week.
Right.
Things might be warming up, and I'm trying to figure out. It's fun to read the bees and to see how they respond to drastic changes in weather week to week. So I have a very small scale like example of behaviors and things like that. I definitely would say things are getting hotter. I think that's my answer, and maybe that's a dumb answer, but it's warming up. Winters are not as intense, and summers are brutal. I was just even talking to a guy at the coffee shop a week ago who's been in Charlotte way longer than me, and he was talking about just 15 years ago. Summers were not brutal; they were comfortable, they were great, and now you can't go outside without having to bring 4 pairs of pants and 4 shirts. You know, like it's just getting hotter.
So is that
I don't know.
helping the bees or hurting them?
You know,
or what?
I think that gives them a longer season. I honestly think it gives them a longer season for foraging, but at the same time, I think it might actually confuse them a little bit because they have a just like an internal clock, and they read seasons, and that's actually helped me read the weather a little more as well because I have to stay on top of prep for seasons, you know, happening in the future. I can't prep for summer during the summer. I have to prep for summer during the spring. And so the moves I'm making and the work I'm doing and, you know, the tests I'm doing, things like that, I've got to be thinking about those things way in advance. And I do wonder if that throws off their clock because they're now, it's November and they've been able to come out and forage a little bit on the last of the goldenrod and the last of things that are still not really in bloom, but are at the end of their bloom that still have some resource to pull from. I've got to think that affects their schedule a little bit, and it might hinder their ability to fully prep for a winter. And maybe that's totally wrong. Maybe someone that knows way more than me could put an end to what I'm saying at this very moment. But from what I've been able to see small scale and just the 1 year of experience I've had in this world and being able to just go out back and watch them, I've got to think that warmer temps for longer definitely play with their ability to fully prep and to let them know when shops officially close for the winter, you know?
Yeah. So while it may seem good, it may not actually be good, right?
Yeah. I guess that's once again, you've summed up beautifully what I've taken the long way to say.
No, that's but I mean that makes sense because I mean it's been like that with a lot of animals, you know, both on land and sea. So it would make sense that, you know, while the bees are thinking, you know, this it's pretty good that we're actually going out in, you know, November to go and get, you know, nectar to make more honey. It could, you know, affect them because then it's going to throw everything off kilter in the long run.
Absolutely. And so that's why I either way, no matter what's going on, I'm trying to prep for winter. I'm trying to make sure that they have some emergency food stores to get them through the end of winter because we've done an inspection just in the last couple of weeks and we've seen more frames of capped honey that they need. Fun fact, bees that live in tropical areas where it's summer all year round, they don't typically make honey. Bees make honey in cold climates where they need to survive our winter. That's the only reason that they really collect and store and cap honey. If a bee has summer all year round, they're eating that stuff they're collecting almost immediately because they don't need to save, they don't need to overwinter anywhere. So it's fascinating as you move north, the longer the winters, the more honey that beehives need before going into winter. I'm thankful to be a beekeeper, and we found this in gardening too. We're thankful for the growing season and the beekeeping world down in Charlotte because it's easier, I think, than a lot of places the farther you go north because they just have so much more that can wipe out a colony so quickly, temperatures and weather and things like that. So I'm grateful for that, and that's been just a fascinating thing to notice and take note of with my bees here in Charlotte and things like that.
Well, Zach, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come onto the podcast. But before we sign off, if people want to learn more about beekeeping, or if they want to reach out to you, or they just want to know any pretty good resources for beekeeping in general, where would you direct them?
Yeah, so I've got a note because I have a few places that I like to reference when I have questions and I want to know stuff and I want to learn how to build things. My favorite YouTube reference, my favorite YouTube beekeeper, his name is David Burns, and that's what his channel's name is, David Burns. He's up in Illinois, I believe. So a lot of his beekeeping has to do with more of their climate, but the practical skills, the advice, the reviews he does on certain pieces of equipment and gear and frames and things like that, he's spot on. And I've really appreciated sitting down and watching through his videos. They've been very educational, very informative. Another big guy in that world, and he goes to a lot of bee conventions around the U.S. His name is Kamen Reynolds. He's out of Tennessee, and I think his climate's a little more similar to Charlotte's. Not as hot, not as humid, but I think they deal with similar waves of weather. He's got a lot of great methods, a lot of great techniques, has a lot to teach, very passionate. Both these guys are very passionate. And on Instagram, I've got a couple of accounts that I follow that have been great references as well. They share very fascinating articles that get you thinking, that challenge you as a beekeeper to make you a better beekeeper. And they also just post a lot of really cool stuff. Their passion for bees, behavior, history of bees and famous beekeepers, things like that. One of them is Cassia and Bees, I'm sorry. Another account that I really appreciate is Carmen over at Nuga Honeypot. She's in Chattanooga, Tennessee. She was just answering questions I had for her today about insulating my hives for the winter. And then I wanted to make sure that I gave you the website for the Mecklenburg Beekeepers Association, because Beekeepers School signups is officially open. And I think they only go for a couple of more weeks, but I really encourage you to visit the mecbeekeepers.org website and inquire, do some research, maybe even sign up to go through this next 2024 beekeeper school just to learn. I mean, not even if you don't want to beekeep, that's fine. Totally understand. But it's so educational. You get a lot out of it, and it might spark a new passion. At least then you have a knowledge of what those bees are doing in your yard and how vital they are to everything else that's growing and fruiting and making a vegetable and all of those things being pollinated. You gain an appreciation, and then you also understand like the world of a beekeeper and the challenges and the responsibilities and the honor it is to beekeep and to keep bees and to help them and aid them in the ways that they need. And I'll do a little plug. If you want to, you don't have to. I just run a little Instagram account. It's @_Z's, the letter Z's, Bees, apiary _ That's my Instagram. You can check me out. I need to do better at posting more stuff. I realize the algorithm and all that stuff, I'm probably not helping myself, but I'm grateful for the follow, grateful for people coming along on this journey with me, grateful to talk about bees. Luca, thanks for letting me sit down and just talk your ear off. I'm sorry if we didn't get anywhere, but
Oh no, you're fine. I mean,
love
you're just
bees,
giving,
man. I just
I mean,
love
you're
bees.
just giving me more ideas for future episodes, and I plan on having you come back later on.
Man, I'd be honored. There's so much to talk about. I feel like I didn't skim even the surface of beekeeping and all that goes on, but still learning, and I'm still grateful for the ability to continue this journey and to become a better beekeeper, and ways that carries over and to who I am as a person and who I want to be. So grateful. And those are my resources. Go check them all out. I support them. I love them. They're fun to watch, and they've got a lot of great advice and a lot of great helpful tips.
Yeah, and if you can send me the links for some of those, I'll put them down in the description below. So
You got
people
it.
can reach out. So before we sign off, I asked this of all my guests. Is there a particular movie or TV show that you really, really love that you want to give a shout out to? Doesn't have to be bee related.
No, it's okay. No. But it's not going to be a surprise to you. And I love that you had just gotten done talking about how you had just watched Man vs. Wild, because we have just started working our way through Homestead Rescue. It's a show on HBO Max. It's been out for apparently a while. I'm always late to the game on every old show that's been out. I'm always watching old shows like they've just came out. It's with a guy named Marty Rainey and his daughter and son from the middle of nowhere, Alaska, living off the grid, and they go through all over the US and Canada, and they help people that thought they could homestead and realized when it became a matter of life and death that they actually are in trouble and they need help. And so they go through, and it's just fascinating. It's just a fascinating show, and I love the short documentary style storytelling. And I mean, even the camera crew puts themselves at risk just like getting the shots that they get. And Marty Rainey is crazy. He'll do anything and anything to help people live off grid. And it's just, I love the intuitive and the ingenuity. I love the out of the box ideas he has to make something life saving out of just the resources that they have on their property. It blows my mind. So I love that for the creativity. We just watched a Beekeeper episode. I have some opinions about it because I don't know if he's keeping bees correctly, but it was very fascinating, and he loved bees, and they made his homestead functional and livable, and he got to keep the bees. So I was happy about that.
Excellent. Well, Zach, again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to be on this podcast. Thank you so much. And I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this episode. And remember, as always, to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Take it easy.
Luca, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.